My friends, welcome to the Introduction to Antidote. I'm so happy that you're here. I cannot wait to get into this. This is stuff that we've been developing for 10 months now, and it is now time to start teaching it and time for you to start learning it. So I'd love to welcome you to Habits Make It Happen. Again, this is the foundation for this course. Everything in this module kind of informs the rest of this course. So if you pay attention to one thing, pay attention to this module. This is Habits Make It Happen. The introduction to the HARP system. This is something that we've been working on for so long and something that makes me so excited to begin to teach. So I'm not going to waste any time saying anything more introductory because we already had an intro module. Let's jump right into Habits Make It Happen. There are 3 key habits that need to break the phone cycle forever. These are 3 things that I've been doing on and off over the course of my life, and probably you have too, but recognizing them is just another way to add another layer of awareness to what you do. So before we break down the 3 key habits needed to break the cycle of phone addiction forever, we need to look at one key thing, and that is why you scroll. Now, you might think about when and where you pick up your phone, but the motivation behind those whens and wheres, and even the whys, is 2 words, and I'll write them out for you right now. The 2 words are emotional regulation. This is the core motivation behind why you pick up your phone and why you feel the need, why we all feel the need to scroll our lives away and go to bed looking at social media and wake up and pick up our phone for the first thing. If you're feeling something that you don't want to feel, your phone is an easy way out and a doorway to cheap, short-term dopamine. Emotional regulation is a human need. It's very core to who we are. Dopamine makes us feel accomplished, happy, and keeps us coming back for more. And phone addiction is a fast way and an easy way to fill these needs. Emotional regulation is somewhat of a vicious cycle, and it's illustrated very basically like this. You have a sad feeling. That's me or you. But then if you have a phone, illustrated by a rectangle on a home screen, that makes you a little less sad. And notice how it's not fully happy. This is just an okay looking face. So emotional regulation and phone addiction doesn't really solve any of the problems that we're facing, whether it's in our head or physically or mentally or whatever it is just sort of a Band-Aid to put on what we're feeling. There was a study published in Addictive Behaviors that revealed physical changes in the brain from phone addiction. These same changes are associated with substance abuse addictions, like addictions to drugs or alcohol. So what does this mean? Well, phone addiction is a real addiction. Addiction with correlation with depression and anxiety. It is something that clearly correlates to feelings of negativity and things that we've all felt at one point or another in our own lives. And up to 50% of adults say that they are addicted to their phones. I know that I was definitely one of those adults at one point, and maybe you feel like that too. So it's not an uncommon thing to want to emotionally regulate with the thing that is easiest to emotionally regulate with, which is your phone. Breaking the cycle is all about finding healthier alternatives of emotional regulation and getting dopamine. These are core needs, emotional regulation and having dopamine. So finding ways that you can chisel out a better and more healthy way to receive those things that you feel from your phone in just a more wholesome way is exactly what we're doing here. I remember what it was like before phones became such a universal thing. And it was such a mind-blowing experience to be able to hold a little device that could go to YouTube in your hand. So I've been around since before phones were ubiquitous, and I think that perspective has sort of allowed me to inform the rest of really this course on things that will help you become less addicted to your phone and find healthier alternatives to emotional regulation. So how do we break the cycle? Well, let's discover the big 3 habits. These are the 3 habits that we need to break the cycle of phone addiction forever. And there's 3 of them, obviously. These 3 foundational habits provide alternate sources of emotional regulation and dopamine, as well as provide a productive channel for your reclaimed time. So let's discover those now. The first one here is meditation. The second one here is physical exercise. And the last one here is goal-focused routines. So these are the 3 big habits that we need to capture and to learn about and to implement into our lives in order to have a healthier relationship with not only our phone, but technology in general. Meditation is obviously a healthy source of emotional regulation. It provides a space of calm and a sense of oneness with yourself and allows for a little bit more introspection than you would normally have when you're just scrolling through your phone. It's an extremely powerful practice and it's different for everyone, which I'm very excited to get into. The next one is physical exercise, another healthy source of dopamine. Maybe you grew up doing sports, like I definitely did. It is such an amazing way, especially when you approach it through the lens of doing it for just kind of maintaining your body and keeping it active. Such an amazing way to have dopamine present in your life in a way that's very healthy. Definitely way healthier than being on your phone. And the last one is goal-focused routines. These are things that we will build to help channel your energy now and your reclaim time now that you have developed the first two of the big habits. They are things that you should implement into your life in order to just kind of level up, which is amazing. It creates productive channels for the reclaim time from phone addiction, and it's a way to create systems to make a more fulfilling life for yourselves. I do a lot of these in sporadic sprints, and I think I have for my entire life, really. But calling them out like this in a way that lists them out and, simplifies it to really only 3 of them is something that I'm super excited to not only implement in my life continuing forward, but also teach you how to do, because it really, there's so much power in simplifying and coming up with systems that work for you. Every time I implement these into my life, I just notice how much better I feel at all times. But first, what is a habit? We just talked about the 3 big habits that we need to implement, but if you really think about it, what are habits? Well, habits are the small decisions that you make and the actions that you perform every day. Most of them feel automatic. In fact, the best habits are the ones that you don't have to think about. Researchers at Duke University said that habits account for more than 40% of our behaviors on a given day. So these are things in our brain, habits that we have that just kind of happen on autopilot. And that's the best part, is habits are sort of meant to happen without you thinking about them. That's the best part of a habit. So imagine if we are able to create the habit of getting rid of phone addiction and it just becomes automatic. That just completely flips your life upside down in the best way possible. Your life today is essentially a sum of your habits. I grew up with my mom telling me how you practice becomes your habit. That comes from the martial arts side. I don't know if I said it in the introduction, but I've been doing martial arts since I was 3. So I don't know what it's like to not do martial arts. And I think a big part of martial arts is discipline and habit building, really. And whenever I would be learning a new technique or a new form or what have you, my mom, who is my instructor, would always say, how you practice becomes your habit. And while that sounds like a really simple adage, it rings true every single day. And the more and more I think of it, the more and more truthful and clarity giving it is. So how you practice becomes your habit. Everything I do is habitual, and it's tough to pinpoint most of the habits that I have, and probably for you, because they're unconscious. An example is, think of the thing that you do when you get home from work or from school. That's a habit. Think of the first thing that you do when you wake up, whether it's grab your phone or get in the shower. Those are habits as well. You may think that those are part of routines, but routines are built through habits. So the goal of this module here, Habits Make It Happen, is to make it happen through habits. And that's something that I'm super excited to explore with you more. And a big part of habit building is understanding the 4 stages of a habit. And this can be attributed to James Clear, of course. If you've read Atomic Habits, this is the backbone of that book. But James Clear is also making a continuation of Charles Duhigg's work from The Power of Habit. So all habits follow a repeated pattern with 4 distinct stages. In order to understand how to build and break habits, we first must understand the 4 stages as it stands here. So the 4 stages are as follows. The first one here is a cue. The next one is a craving. The next stage is a response. And the last stage is reward. So these are the 4 stages that all habits follow. Whether you like it or not, this is how it goes. So, for example, think of when you get a notification on your phone, whether it's a text or something from Instagram, let's say. So the cue is that little buzz in your pocket. It triggers desire, and it eventually becomes associated with reward, the reward of looking and knowing and getting that emotional regulation from someone tagging you in a photo, for example. So the cue is the notification going off in your pocket. The craving is the motivational force behind habits. It drives action. The desire that you have to check your phone is what drives you to take your phone out of your pocket. The response is the actual habit being performed. So the act of you taking your phone out or grabbing for your phone or reaching for it, taking it out of your bag, it is the response to that cue. Motivation plus the ability to have to take action, when the motivation and the ability added together are greater than the friction that it takes to get your phone out, for example, that is what spurs action. And the reward is the end goal of each habit. It is why you're taking your phone out. In this case, the satisfaction of knowing why your phone buzzed, whether it was a text or someone saying a mean thing on Instagram in your pocket, that is the reward. It satisfies the craving and it teaches us. So doing this over and over is what builds a habit. Every single habit that you have that you're about to build goes through these 4 stages. So understanding, the stages that habits go through allow us to sort of break apart habits, and not only break them apart, but understand how to put together good habits. So understanding the habit loop helps us change, and that's exactly what we're going through here. We can modify cues, alter cravings, adjust responses, and reframe rewards, which, if you could guess, that's exactly what we're going to do. In fact, there's a whole system here for learning how to build and break habits, and this is from James Clear's Atomic Habits. So by manipulating the 4 stages of habits, we can make it significantly easier to build or break any habit. I've been brute forcing habits for years, and maybe you have too. When it comes to making a new habit, you just say, okay, I just got to do it over and over again. And while that's a really viable way to make a habit, it's not necessarily the most efficient. So there's better systems that we'll go over, one of them right now, that make the process less like you're fitting a square peg into a round hole and more like you're fitting a round peg into a round hole. That is the whole point of what we're doing here, and the whole point of building and breaking habits in the most efficient way possible. So I'd love to go through really quickly here how to build and break any habit. It's pretty cool because one is sort of the inverse of the other. Really quick here, I'm going to write out the 4 stages, which if you remember are cue, craving, response, and reward. So in order to build a habit, there are things that we can do to the 4-stage cycle that every habit goes through. In order to build a habit, you need to make the cue obvious, and we'll go over these in greater depth later. So in order to make a positive change in your life, you have to make it obvious and you have to make it easy. So for example, I leave my weights here in the middle of the floor every night, so that when I come into my office first thing in the morning, that is the most obvious thing in the room. So I hit a little workout before getting into work like this. The next thing is making your craving attractive. Make it something that you actually want to do. So after seeing an obvious cue, making it something that makes you excited or makes it attractive. The next thing is making the response to that cue and craving easy. So reducing the friction between the desire to take part in this action and the actual action itself is super key. And the last one is make the reward satisfying. So in order to build a habit, you need to manipulate the 4 stages of habits in a positive way. Make the cues obvious, make the craving attractive, make the response easy, and make the reward satisfying. However, if you'd like to break a habit, you can probably guess you're just going to do the inverse of what we just wrote down. So if you want to break a habit, make your cue invisible. And again, we'll be going over these in greater depth through the lens of phone addiction and technology in general. But this is just a general high-level overview of what's going on here. In order to break a habit, you need to make the craving unattractive. To continue to break a habit, you need to make the response difficult. And lastly, you need to make the reward unsatisfying. So these are the sort of the high level overviews of how you go about building and breaking habits. And if you can believe it, actually, these are things that you do unconsciously when you're trying to build a habit, or when you feel when a new habit is forming in your life. If a habit is forming, it's generally because the cues are obvious and the craving is attractive and the response is easy and the reward is satisfying. But in order to have a little bit more of a mindful approach to habits, and in this case, phone addiction, we need to be really diligent about making the cues, cravings, responses, and rewards invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing with this course, which is why I'm so excited. I cannot wait to get into this more. So let's dive in. But before we dive in, I want to reiterate that these are foundational to breaking the cycle of phone addiction, right? Understanding these big 3 habits and then also how to implement them into your own life in ways that make sense and that are efficient is the foundation to this whole course, and really anything you want to do in life. So if you're excited to start building some better habits and breaking some bad ones, you're in the right place, because this is the exact course that will do that kind of thing. There is so much material to cover here that I cannot wait to get into with you. In fact, there's also a full guided journal that you'll go through in order to make sure you comprehend all these subjects and these topics and whatnot, and also have a place for you to reflect and make a game plan moving forward. So make sure you're doing that alongside this course. Thank you so much for being here. I cannot wait to get into the next one, which we'll talk about the big 3. So thanks for being here. Hope this helped, and I'll see you in the next lesson.